true. And then we're told, well, actually, yeah, but here it does, and here's the tedious length so that it does. So will these tools help? I guess the challenge that Mark and I face, and you won't mind me saying that, is always trying to work out how do we push back against the tedious link that says, well, that's not going to help right now. It might in the future, but you're going to take away from. Because following the session last time we had, Mark and I talked about
I know what you were saying.
The bit we're feeling at right now is we can't actually work out what we stop, because everything we've got on the list is there's a tedious link. Some of it's more directly linked, but the rest of it, there is a long list of just tedious links back to strategy.
So when they say that to you, do you believe it? Do you believe it's linked to the strategy, or do you actually think they're just telling you it's linked to the strategy?
Yeah, it's not always linked to strategy. It's
just so I guess my point in that would be you have to be able to prove it's linked to the strategy. And that's the idea of being able to say to somebody, what you're doing today is linked to the strategy, and I'll show you how it's linked to the strategy. I'll prove it to you. Yeah, so that they do believe you. And if they're just throwing stuff out there that they are saying is linked to the strategy, but you could challenge and say, well, how is doing this task here getting us to where we want to go? Because here's what we said was important. So tell me.
Okay. Yeah.
So there is a bit of an opportunity to push back and I know it's not as black and white as saying, prove it to me. I don't believe you, but you know what I mean. You have to say, well, wait a minute. Here's all the things that when we first did this strategy, here's what we said. Firstly, do they have a plan that's visible to you that says on a quarter by quarter basis, here's the actions we need to take to deliver the strategy? And if they're then adding things into that original plan, the first question I would have is why? Is it something we missed, which it could be, and needs to be added in? Has something changed? In which case, back to communication, take the time to talk to me and tell me why it's changed, and therefore I'll understand why we're having to do this. Or has something slipped, and this is a way of catching back up? It's like anything. If you think about it, and I tend to call it a roadmap of where we're going. If you have a roadmap, and I'm going from A to B to C to D to E, and then suddenly somebody comes back and says, okay, I now want you to go from B to Z.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why? Right? And if there's a very good reason for it, and it's, use all the analogies, it's a detour, it's something, that's great. But you don't just accept that, well, wait a minute, I was going from B to C, and we all bought into that, and now you're telling me I'm going from B to Z, but am I still going to C, or am I going from Z? I don't get it. And this is where they're letting themselves down, I would suggest, Lynn, is they're not taking the time to give you the why.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think that helps actually. It helps clarify it for me in terms of the best way for us to gently push back to clarify the why.
It's the why. And because again, they first of all, I would suggest hopefully they want people to challenge them. So they're not just looking for yes men. And again, the issue you sometimes, and this is this whole thing about strategy happens at a high level, because this must be what you're feeling just now. It's all happening up there, and then we're just given the task to do. Whereas actually strategy should involve everyone in the business. And at their level, yes, things change. And this is why I call it a strategy cycle and not a plan, because it's continuous as far as I'm concerned. Strategy just goes on and on and on, and you tweak it and you make changes. But there has to be a why. There has to be a reason for doing that. And if your senior board have a reason, then it's not hard to take the time to explain it to everybody else. That's all they've got to do. It's back to communication. Just tell me why.
No, that helps.
And that's a challenge to them as well, because if they can't give you a good reason, then your second question is another why. It's then, right, so you're now telling me this has no link really, if we're honest, to the strategy. It's just something you want done. And that's fine, but therefore there's a knock-on effect on the strategy.
Yeah. Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. That helps. Thank you. Yeah, that does help. Thank you.
So Yeah, these are all just the principles, the stuff that's sitting in the back, and this is what I developed. And almost immediately when I developed it, I regretted calling it the symbiotic strategy cycle because it's a very heavy, lumpy, shitty title. But having done it and published it a bit, I'm kind of stuck with it. It was the same when I set up my business, Symbiotic Management Limited, and it sounds really good. And it's, yeah, symbiotic, it's about working and symbiosis as partnership and everything else. So all the rationale's there. But imagine trying to type that out in a frigging email. So I should have called it something shorter. It's rubbish. Brian, sorry, did you have a question, mate?
Yeah, it was just in the last one. It's not really important. It was just more of an observation that I guess in the past, using strategy as an anchor for difficult conversations is really
Yeah,
useful. And just
yeah,
paring it right down to that. Because I remember it being done to me as well as doing it when I was exiting somebody from a business, and we went through this whole thing and took a lot of energy and time, and we are doing it the right way. And then I came in the next day and my CEO decided that we were keeping him after a chat with his wife, who also worked in the business. And I don't get angry, but I was really angry, and he knew it. He didn't know how to handle me. He brought me into a room and we talked about it and said, it wasn't the best way to do it, but fundamentally for where we want to be as an organization, we need to have that person for the next 6 months. And I still don't think it was the right way to do it, but having that conversation was anchored back in there, and it was taking the personalities out of it.
yeah.
And so I could at least find some link in there rather than just be absolutely raging. And I guess not that I've done it, not that I've been on the other side and done that particular thing, but I think it helps in our team when we're making decisions, difficult decisions, where maybe we're saying no to a funder or to a person in the
Yes,
team.
yeah,
Actually, this is because, and we've agreed that this is the right strategy to take, and it's nothing personal.
yeah. No, and you're absolutely 100%. And again, it's something when I'm dealing with SMEs is all the time, is one of the hardest things for an SME to do is to learn to say no. And yet that can be one of the best things they do. And again, it does come back to this idea of having the plan. And if it's the right plan, if it's the right strategy, and something comes up as an opportunity, but it's going to deviate or take you in a different direction, you really have to think about it very carefully, not in terms of the opportunity itself per se, but what's the impact on the strategy? Because if you put your time and effort into making this strategy and you believe that it's the right strategy for the business, the fact that something nice and shiny appears on the horizon in itself is not a good reason for abandoning your strategy. Now, it might be, and you might say, you know what, never saw this on the horizon. This is such a fantastic opportunity. We're going to go off and pursue it. But what you then have to do is think about the implications on the strategy. So does that mean our strategy is no longer valid, or does it mean we're going to delay our strategy for 6 months to focus on this, whatever it is, opportunity over here? Or does it mean we're going to totally change our strategy? And as long as you've got through the process of thinking about it, and as long as it's a really informed, conscious decision, then it's fine. But equally, you then, back to communication again, you have to explain to everybody why we're now changing, why are we now going in this different direction. And it could be because it is such a fantastic opportunity, and there's such an opportunity to get into a new market or new revenue streams or something. There can be good reasons for changing and deviating, but just think about it first before you automatically say yes because somebody's thrown money at you. Because that's the hardest thing for an SME. Somebody wants to give you money, you've got to say, yes, please, where do I sign? But it could be the wrong thing for the business overall. You just have to take it into context and decide that. So I've broken the process, the cycle as I call it, into excuse me, 8 steps, beautifully color coordinated. So the first 3 are the thinking piece, which is personal goals, and that's the where we'll start. Thinking about the company, what's the company good at, analysing the pros and cons, setting up the direction and the overall goal and vision. So that's all the kind of blue sky thinking that we do in the business. Then there's the planning piece, which is developing the detailed roadmap that I talked about. And a really important piece, I believe, is actually selling the vision. And it's not a mistake to call it selling the vision, because we're not just communicating it, we're selling it to people and the people in our business. So that's a real important, and these areas require a lot of planning and a lot of work and effort. Then we get into the hardest piece of all, which is actually making it happen. Because up until here, it's all been great, because it's flip charts, it's spreadsheets, it's sitting in a room bouncing ideas off each other. Even the planning piece is a bit like that. But then when you've actually got to make it happen, that's the tricky bit. So executing the strategy, measuring it to make sure we know where we are. And then this idea that, yeah, even with the best strategies in the world, you will still constantly have to adjust or confirm that we're still heading in the kind of right direction. So what we'll do is we'll work through each of these 8 areas, and some of them give you some tools, some tips, some ideas, but a rationale in all of them, why they're important to do and why they're important to do in this order, because it's kind of crucial to get to the end result. Okay, so far?
Yeah, all good.
Cool. So the thinking piece, the personal goals, company analysis, company vision, the planning piece, the strategy and the vision itself, and the doing piece, and we'll go in that order. So the first one I had there, I call personal goals. Now, for me, this is the most important starting point to build any plan, any strategy, anything in terms of driving the business forward. And the reason I say that is as much from experiencing mistakes and errors, because in the good old days, that wasn't the approach I used to take. And the problem is, if you don't start from that real approach with your key stakeholders, then you don't know if people are aligned. Because the whole point about delivering a good strategy is to get that alignment and engagement and everybody bought into it. And the area we all really kind of either purposely ignore because we feel it's none of our business, or don't even think about, is what are the motivations and drivers for the individual key stakeholders that are an important part of our business. Now, key stakeholders don't necessarily mean the board, the senior management team. Yes, they're going to be part of it. But you might also have 1 or 2 individuals in your organization who, whilst we always say nobody's indispensable, are actually pretty indispensable, because they're single points of failure, or they just happen to have knowledge and experience that no one else in the organization has. So the first challenge for you when you're building a strategy is to actually think about who your key stakeholders are. Who are the people in your business that are going to be making everything happen and who will all play a crucial role in delivering the strategy for the business going forward? So once you've identified who the key stakeholders are, you then need to start really understanding what their personal motivation and drivers are. And the way I do this and the way I recommend to people to do it is really just asking 4 very simple questions. The whole thing with all of this is, for once, it's kind of not about the business, it's all about them. Yeah? So it's all about me. For once, the conversation is all about me and what's important to me, not what's important to the business. And I just have 4 questions which I use when I'm, maybe facilitating for another business, or I recommend people use. And it's dead simple. And the idea behind the questions is it's as a test for alignment within the business. How well are all our key stakeholders aligned in the business to help therefore deliver the outcome we're looking for? So the first question is a very simple one, and it's just, what do you believe the current vision of the business to be? Now, the reason you ask that is that's a wee test on communications, you know. So you would expect key stakeholders in the business to know where the business is going, what its future plans are, and what the vision is for success within that business. But don't do it as a critical exercise. In other words, if somebody, you just take a note of whatever somebody tells you. You're not saying that it's right or wrong. You're not, you're not challenging them. It's not a test. You're not trying to catch them out. You just want to know, we think we know what we're all doing. Does everybody else in the business know what we're doing? So you ask that simple question, what do they think the current vision of the business is? The second question kind of follows on from that in terms of the magic wand question, which is, okay, so, that's where you believe we're going. If this was your business, you owned it 100%, you had no one else you had to refer to, what would you be doing with the business? What would your vision for the business be if it was yours? What direction would you take it in? What would you want to do with it? And the reason you ask that question is to understand more about where they see the business and what they see the strengths and weaknesses of the business. And it also will undoubtedly generate some things you hadn't thought of, some of which will be rubbish ideas that you won't take any further, but some may well be good ideas that you think, yeah, that's interesting. That's something we had never thought of. Because again, you have to bear in mind, even with a great leadership team and a great board, not everybody has the answers, Not everybody thinks of every eventuality. Not everybody can sometimes see the wood for the trees, as they say, whereas those that are in the front line often do get that kind of feedback from clients, from customers. They see what's really going on. So it's a really useful question to ask. And it's also quite often one that people have never been asked before. So they like getting asked their opinion. They like getting asked their view. Brian?
Can I just ask a wee question on, so here's my silly question. How would you reframe that for like the likes of our organizations, which is kind of some pseudo public sector type thing where nobody owns it and you've got all these big meaty stakeholders? Would the question to be like to our management team, if we were to go through each of them, to say, if you were the CEO of this organization, would that be the kind of reframing?
Yeah, no, it is. It's definitely, you're wanting them just to think about it as if they were running it and they owned it. This is, so tomorrow we're now giving you, we've decided you're now going to own this business. It's yours. We're giving it to you. What would you do with it? Where would you take it? What would you want to do with it? What do you think is the right thing to do with it? So yeah, it's just about getting them to think about not what is currently being done or what everybody else would say, but what's their kind of personal view? What would they do with it? And don't get me wrong, some people just say, no, I think what we're doing is great. And that's fine. There are no right and wrong answers to any of this. You're looking for just views and opinions and information. But some people, you'll be surprised, will have, if it was me, we're going left and I would take us right. Oh, okay, why? So, you can drill down, you can say, okay, why did you say that? Explain to me what are your ideas. You can get some real fascinating insights. And a lot of people have a lot of really good ideas, but they never feel they have the chance to get involved. There's never the right forum. They're not, they're not in a normal forum going to come out and say, I don't think we should do that, when everybody else in the room's nodding heads. Whereas in a one-to-one conversation, private conversation, and you've asked them to tell you, then they're going to tell you. Yeah?
Thanks.
Does that work?
Yep.
Cool. The third question is then the personal one, in terms of what's important for you and your family goals over the next 18 months, 2 years. And the reason it's quite a short time scale is because that's the one question out of all of them that the answer will change to within that time scale, because it changes based on our personal circumstances. It could be one of the most important things for people is, my kids they're in 4th year of school, So you know what? The most important thing for me is job stability, job security. I don't want to move. I don't want to go anywhere else for the next couple of years till the kids finish up. It could be I've got elderly parents, and you know, in an ideal world, I would actually like to relocate 400 miles south because that's where my parents live, so I could look after them. You're just wanting to understand from people what is important to them and what, if anything, is going to cause problems within the business or equally opportunities within the business to do something different. And again, the reason that's important is because at the end of the day, that will, for most people, be the biggest driver. What their personal needs are and what their family needs are, and what sometimes external pressures are coming on to them to make decisions. If there's an issue with the kids, if there's an issue with parents, if there's an issue with family, that's going to detract people from committing their whole selves to the business. And if you can find a way of helping satisfy that need, still in line with the vision and goal of the business, then you really have one to watch. I'll give you an example from my own career. When I worked for a supply company for Yellow Pages for 13 odd years, and I would have been there for about 4 years, and I was then going through a divorce, and I was based down in Scarborough. The family were up here in Edinburgh, and basically I said to my boss at that point in time, I said, look, there's no rush, there's no immediate requirement, but going through a divorce in the next couple of years, I really want to move back up to Scotland. Scarborough's fine, but I'm commuting at the weekends. It's not great. I think I can probably do my job from up there, but I'm just putting it out on the table. And so if you don't think I can do it, then I can start looking for other jobs and we can succession plan, but I'm not just going to turn my back on the organisation and bugger off. And what actually happened was, a couple of months later, we looked at setting up a subsidiary business. I was actually to build websites. We set up a web design company. And because of the conversations we'd had, he said, well, how do you fancy, leaving the ad side and doing the web business, and we can set that up in Edinburgh? And I said, sounds fantastic. I'd love to do that. So that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had the conversation. So it's back to the we don't know what we don't know. So we've actually got to give people knowledge so they can help us. And it really, I know that's an example that worked for me, and it doesn't work in every circumstance. But I would argue that having that openness and talking to people really just creates opportunities to satisfy people, but also to create an opportunity for the business to retain the good people you want to retain. So you're not losing good people just because of circumstances or fate or something you knew nothing about. I'll give you another example round about that. There's Mark coming in. Hi Mark, how you doing?
Hi folks, good thanks, how are you?
Welcome. See, we haven't got far, we're still in step one.
Oh, that's good. Apologies I'm late.
It's all right. So I did work with a CGI company that were doing basically the trailers you see for video games. So, you see these trailers, photoreal, fantastic looking things, but the wee bit at the bottom says this is not actual gameplay. So, they're really high quality stuff. And 4 guys had started the business 12 years ago. They were at the stage that they wanted to really develop a more aggressive strategy for growing the business. And so we set up a couple of off-site days. We went to talk about it all. Now, obviously, because they've been there for so long, they had all gravitated into different roles. One had become the MD, one had become the creative director, one was a producer, and one really just was an artist supervisor. So it was the CEO that started the whole thing and the MD, and he said, right, so I'll kick it off. And his goal was he wanted to build the business up over the next 4 or 5 years, to sell it, but actually ideally to be absorbed by another company. So to be bought over and for them all still to work, if you like, within that environment, but for a bigger player who create bigger opportunities. And great, Snivery's nodding, yeah, that sounds good. The supervisor lad said, I'd never thought about selling the business, but yeah, if somebody wants to give me some money for my shares, I'll be absolutely delighted. So yeah, I'm in. I'll go along with that as we develop the strategy, which was fine. The producer, who was actually Canadian, but married to a Scottish girl with a couple of kids, his main issue was actually staying in Glasgow because that was his wife's infrastructure, if you like, with family, and it meant a lot to her. She was really close to her family. It was handy for the kids, for grandparents, and all that kind of thing. So his goal was, he says, yeah, you know, I love what I'm doing. I don't want to change what I'm doing. If we sell the business and I can still do what I'm doing and I can still stay in Glasgow, that ticks the box for me. So fantastic, everybody's in alignment so far. Then the creative director stood up, and because of the nature of the business, really, he was the kind of, for want of a better word, I'd describe him as the key IP for the business. So his creativity and being the creative director and overseeing the projects was really absolutely crucial. And Stuart stood up and said, yeah, he says, I've been thinking about this since, this meeting was coming up, and I'm actually kind of fed up of working in animation and I want to go and do live work. And I've done a wee bit of research, and I'm really probably going to have to go to the States. So I'm going to have to go to the States to do this live work because I want the opportunity. I'm in my kind of late 30s now. I've got this. I want to do that. And everybody's going, what? Where did that come from? Now, these are 4 guys that have built a company together over 12 years, that have worked together every day for 12 years, and nobody had the first inkling that this is what Stuart wanted to do. And if Stuart had just upped sticks and left the business, to be honest, they were screwed, because it was his creativity, skills, and expertise that kept the whole thing going. But on the plus side, now that was out in the open, we could do something about it. So, we started saying, well, okay, is this immediate? Is it something? He says, no, maybe in the next sort of 2 or 3 years. Right, so if we build a 2 or 3 year strategy to up and sell the business, is that going to satisfy everybody? So what I'm trying to say is, until you ask the questions, you don't know. Once you know, you can hopefully work together to align everybody's requirements. And yes, does it mean changing some of the original plans? It does. But if you are retaining and better still engaging and motivating your key stakeholders, it's going to get you there quicker anyway. So it really, really helps. There was another business. It's amazing how these things came out. I was working with a family-owned business that was a kind of wholesale provider of books and gifts and things. And the father was in the business. He was getting into his 60s. He decided he really wanted to kind of do something different. So he had 2 sons, one of whom was actually a professional judo athlete. And he just dipped in and out the business part-time to help out in between training. And his younger son, who was a very clever guy, but had never really shown any interest in the business. He'd always worked for other companies and things out with it. So anyway, we went down the road of, okay, can we sell the business? Can we float it? We engaged lawyers. We spent about 25 grand getting it into shape so it could be bought. At the end of the day, we didn't get high enough bids for the business that made it worthwhile selling, because what he could take out on a yearly basis without very little effort, he would only sell it for maybe 5 times that, so it wasn't worth him doing. So the business came back together. And a week later, his youngest son came back in and said, oh, Dad, I'm so glad we didn't sell the business, because I would like to run this business in 2 or 3 years' time. He'd never said that to his dad. His dad didn't know it. So we could have sold the business, and it would have been, now that business since, and I'm going back, when did I get involved with them? probably about 6 years ago. So what has happened is the dad retired, the younger son, who's a very clever guy, took over, and in that period has grown the business from 6 million turnover to 25 million turnover. And yet they hadn't had the simple conversation of almost, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself in a few months' time? And that's family, let alone hired employees who are key stakeholders in the business. So, hopefully that's just a couple of examples that shows you this stuff is absolutely crucial, which is why I call it step one and why I spend so much time banging on about it. The fourth question, told you there were 4 questions. The fourth question is, what are the short-term roadblocks, say 3 to 6 months, that are stopping any of the things you've told me so far from happening? Now, any of those things could be personal, they could be his vision, her vision of the business, they could be the current vision and strategy of the business. But just what are the short-term roadblocks? What's stopping us get to where you would like to be, or you would like us to be? And again, that's a great source of information. It's a great source of identifying some quick fixes you can do, hopefully, within the business to either help re-energize and remotivate people, or just to fix some of the problems that are making people's lives hard. Because again, as leaders in any business, one of your main jobs is just to really make everybody's life as easy as possible, to enable them to do the best job they can do and not to get involved in all the shit of the day that comes down in everybody's heads. Now that's not to say it's up to you to do it yourself and take it away from them. It's not. But it's up to you to look at how can we avoid things like that happening in the future. But again, if you don't know about them, you can't do anything about it. We don't know what we don't know. So you can also use this technique for coaching with people. You can use it just for one-to-ones. You can use it anytime you want. But in terms of when you are putting a strategy together, engaging the key stakeholders in this kind of conversation, I think is absolutely crucial. Now, I accept it depends a lot on the culture of the business. Has the business got an open culture where people are comfortable being open to each other, comfortable answering these things, or are there some parts of the business itself where people would be fearful, to be honest? And let's be honest, that happens in some businesses. So you need to take that into account. But an option for you to still do this, even if you're in a business where you feel people wouldn't be open and honest with the chief exec or with you or a board chairman or something, is just bringing a facilitator to do it for you. Because again, that's what I do for a lot of businesses. And it's amazing how when you sit in a room with somebody who doesn't know you from Adam, you don't know them. An hour and a half later, you know their entire life story, their desires, their goals, what they want out of life, what they want. Because people, when you ask them open questions like those 4 questions, and you just sit back and listen, it all comes out. Because as I say, quite often nobody's ever asked them before, and it's just all of a sudden there's an avalanche of stuff comes out because you've just asked a very, very simple question. But again, it's about the key stake. In terms of if I'm doing it for a business, I probably allow about an hour and a half for an interview like that. Just 4 questions over an hour and a half. It kind of takes, because obviously you want to drill down in some of them. But it's so useful, and it's so important to do as your first step in building the strategy. Because once you have all that information, you know what you have to do or where you have to go to create maximum alignment and engagement with those key stakeholders. Now, again, in some instances, it may be you have 1 or 2 individuals who are so far out there that there's just no way you can satisfy their personal goals. But again, it's good to know that, because if you know they're not happy and you know you're not going to be able to do stuff to make it happy, then you have a different conversation. It's back to, we keep talking about getting the right people in the bus and throwing the wrong people off the bus. This also can bring that out at the same time. So any questions round about that? Mark, sorry, you kind of came in halfway through it, but we'll catch you up. Any comments, questions? talking through a hole in my head?
No, I think it's I think the personal goals piece, I've noticed a difference with the marketing team. So I think before, culture within Golden Charter perhaps was that they wouldn't talk about, medium, long term, what is it they're looking for. When you start to look at, your team's objectives and things, it's not necessarily the strategy, but certainly understanding where they want to go in their careers makes things
Right.
easier. Because there's I've got a team of 12, and to think that they're all just going to sit at GC forever is really, it's not helpful, is it? And that's not realistic.
Yeah.
But there's people that have been there a long time. So 10 years service, 7 years service, which is a long time for, I think, for anyone to be in a business, but particularly for the younger generation coming out of school. And I think understanding personal goals means that we've been able to have, and my managers have been able to have really open and honest conversations with the team. So it's made succession planning a lot easier. So we've had a lot of movement in the marketing team in the last 4 weeks, and it's still going. And that's because we have all these open conversations about setting objectives for this year and what's their personal growth objectives. And if that happens to be not with Golden Charter, then how do we make sure their exit is smooth for them, but more importantly,
smooth for the business?
Charter? And I think it's a game changer. And I think it's one of those things that I just think it's a game changer for us. I've used it in the past. It's a really, really helpful technique, especially when you're managing big teams, because it's unreasonable to expect them just to sit in the same seat indefinitely. So I think that one in particular resonates with me based on how effective it is with team members and running effective teams.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Anybody else comment?
I think actually those questions would be really useful to ask in one-to-ones with all the team as we start to come back. Because if you look over the last 18 months, if I look in our entire team, a lot of people have had a lot of tragic things happen to them and their families, and a lot of positive things. There's been marriages, babies, and deaths. Life continues even through all this horrible stuff. Yeah. And even though we're trying to do our best and keeping in contact, the first kind of physical meeting and just understanding where everybody is headspace now coming, not that we're not out of it, but at 80% way through or whatever, I think these would be really useful, because I think people's perspectives are going to change pretty significantly, and you want to do the right thing by them and enable them to do what they want to do, whether it's with you or not, and obviously that feeds into what you want to achieve as an organization.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people whose goals, objectives, life desires have changed because of COVID. A lot of people I talk to, the classic one is traveling. A lot of people I talk to, because I used to do it earlier in my career, who, were traveling, we're on the road, we're away from home 2-3 nights a week. They haven't done that for a year and a half. They've worked from home, and all of a sudden they're saying to themselves, why would I ever want to go back to that? Why would I want to be doing that traveling? And actually, I've proved I kind of don't have to. Now, yes, still want to go and meet clients occasionally, but not every single meeting now has to be face-to-face. And therefore, I can slash my traveling dramatically. It's more efficient for me. I get more done. I spend more time with my family. It's such a win-win situation for a lot of people that there'll be things like that people, a lot of people have said, what? I've now kind of experienced what it's like to be semi-retired, and I like it. So maybe I'm going to look for a job that's only 3 days a week and not 5 days a week because I'm older or whatever. So I think you're absolutely right, Brian. I think particularly for when you're starting to bring people back into the office and back into the environment, it's almost just it's an opportunity to check in with people and say, well, how have you changed? How's your mindset changed? What are you thinking now? You may have wanted to be in the same job for the next 10 years. You might now think, what? After a couple of years, I want to do something different. I don't know. But I do agree with you. It's such an opportunity. And I think so many people's perspectives have changed and altered. Cool. Okay, so step 2, and we're still thinking, we're still blue and sky, and this is still the easy stuff. Wait till you go into the hard stuff. I talked about the company and the company analysis, and what I mean by company analysis is actually drilling down to try and identify what your core skills as a business are. Now, I separate that out from what services do we provide, what products do we sell, that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is everybody will have competitors in the marketplace. So what is it we do that's different from our competition that makes people want to work with us and want to repeat work with us and want to partner with us? And it's identifying that core skill rather than the service or product, because I say what you don't want, but it'll happen. What you kind of want to avoid is the only reason somebody does business with you is because you're the cheapest. That's not a nice place to be. And it's not a nice place to be because it means if somebody else comes along that's slightly cheaper than you, you've lost all their business. And you can't control that. Yes, you can control your price, but you can't control someone else entering the market in a cutthroat environment and slashing it. So you kind of don't want to have those kind of conversations. If that's the case, fine, you know that. But ideally, people aren't just working with you because of price. That'll be part of it, but it's not the overall package. So there'll be something that you do that is better or different or just something about your business and the culture and the personality that makes it totally attractive to people as compared to somebody else. And the reason it's kind of important to come up with that rather than just as a service is because that's what you can grow and build on. So there's the classic SWOT, which been around for a long time, but it's still a good tool, and I would still recommend people use it. You look at the green's the internal, red's the external. What are our strengths as a business, and what opportunities do we have as a business to go out there? What are our weaknesses as a business, and what are the external threats to us that happen? So doing a SWOT internally is still a great exercise. What I would do again is encourage you to engage as many of your staff as possible in a SWOT. So again, don't just make it something that the senior leadership team or the senior managers do. Now you're going to get different levels of information, and people in the front line are going to see different strengths and weaknesses than people at the top of the business. But that's a good thing because it's adding information, it's not replicating information. But the other thing is maybe to take it, and if you have a real strong customer relationship or a real strong supplier relationship, also get them to do a kind of an abbreviated SWOT in your business. Go out and ask them, what do they think you're good at? Why do you do business with us? Why do you continue to do business with us? What would make you go to somebody else? Now, that's why you have to have a good, strong relationship with these people, because if you don't, then, it's the classic, the procurement guy will just say, oh, it's all about price. It's all, if we could find somebody cheaper, we would. Now, that's not the kind of relationship or the kind of discussion you want to have, because there's no value in that. But somebody that you've maybe worked with for a long time, that you respect, they respect you, they're going to give you some good answers. And you might be surprised at some of the answers people give you, because you might think, oh, we know we retain that customer because we've got absolutely fantastic customer service, and when they phone up with a problem, we respond like that, and we do this and we do that. They might say it's actually because we don't have any problems with you. We've never tried your customer service. So, and that's a tick for us. You're good. We think if we did, it would be great, but we've never had to do it. Or, it's because of the way you invoice us. We asked you at some point in time, we put the contract together, could we get 45 days instead of your 30? And you said yes. We've always paid in time, so it's worked for. You don't know. It's back to what I said right at the start about don't assume. Don't assume you understand why your customers do business with you, because you may get it wrong. You might not, you might be absolutely right, but just if you have the opportunity, ask the questions. But frame it in a way that's not about, that doesn't end up with the price on it, but is about, why do you do business with us? Why do you continue? What do you like about us? what do we do better than the competition or somebody else you've experienced? And that might not even be in your same sector, that might be in a different sector. But what's good about us? Tell us what's good about us. And again, as I said, the reason you do that and its value is because if you have a real strength in a particular area, in a particular core skill, if you're wanting to grow and expand the business, the first place to look at is where can I take that same skill and strength and apply it to a different market that we're not in just now. That's kind of what we talk about in terms of your low-hanging fruit. Where do we go that's easy to go, that doesn't require a lot of investment, that we don't have to learn new skills, that we know we're good at it, we're just going to do it for somebody new. And whilst normally you would just think about taking it to a different customer in the same sector, widen those thoughts and those discussions to say, what other markets are we not in just now that these same skills could apply? I'll use the CGI company as an example. When we put together the strategy for them, after we'd persuaded Stuart not to go to the States, not to jump in the first plane, when we put together the strategy for them, it was very much a case of, this is what we're really good at. We've got lots of blue chip customers, but it was a weird business because it was a seasonal business. So there was two peaks. There was a peak in March for one of the big game expositions shows, and November just before Christmas when they were launching the new games. So they were kind of flat out for 6 months and almost twiddling their fingers for 6 months, to the extent, just to put that in perspective, they had at that time about 35 full-time employees, and when for 6 months of the year that went up to 150 people. So the rest were all short-term contract that they hired because that's the volume of people they needed. But then the business disappeared, so it dropped way back down again. So it was a nightmare for a number of reasons, as you can imagine, recruitment and skill sets and people, because all these CGI companies use their own bespoke developed creative systems. So people have to learn them before they can use them. So when we're doing our strategy, we're saying, well, okay, really in an ideal world, what we want to do is find things to fill the gaps. If you think about it, if peak busy, then we're quiet, then we're busy, then we're quiet. If we can somehow level that off, we'll want to watch. So all we did was we said, okay, so the skill sets we have, it's about photoreal animation. Where else could we use that we don't? Where else could we sell it? And it was simple stuff. It was like TV adverts. More and more companies doing adverts on the TV are using animation. It's a bit, as I say, yours or Hughes, we could do that. Short form animation for companies doing marketing materials. There's another area. Long form animation, either TV shows or really long form animation where you're looking at films and things like that. And then there was there was another one because it was up and coming, was the whole VR stuff, in terms of what a lot of games companies doing is they have their in-game play, but then they almost have, if you like, a story connector that maybe runs for 3 or 4 minutes in between to take you from the bit you've just finished and set the scene for the next bit you've done. So here were all these areas we could do, none of which we were doing at the time. And so that was going to be our kind of filler. And delighted to say that the business met all its marks and trebled in scale and in revenue in 5 years, because we took our existing skill set. We didn't have to add any people except one sales guy to take us into different areas. We didn't have to add any people. We didn't have to change any systems. We didn't have to bring in any new equipment. All the things that people were already doing, we were then able to sell that skill set to different players. And I'm not saying it was easy. It wasn't easy, but we didn't have to go and spend £5 million on capital investment or reskilling or retraining to go and bring in new business. We used the existing skill set. The other example that's the most obvious of all about taking your core skills and taking them into other markets is Amazon. Obviously, when Amazon started as a business, they sold books. That's what they were. They were an online bookseller. But within, the first few years of the business, they very quickly realized that because of the processes and the structure and the way they were doing things, actually, what they were good at, their core skill, was logistics. It was actually pick, pack, ship. And, you didn't have to be a genius, but obviously Jeff Bezos was. He said, Christ, we can do that for anything. Let's model and let's pull up a structure that we can deliver products for anybody using all our, and that's what they're still doing, rebuilding warehouses all over the world. They've got their own vans and things, they're talking about this nonsense. Well, okay, it's not nonsense. Talking about drones delivering packages. Amazon isn't a retailer, it's a logistics company. And it just so happens they've been clever enough to be able to actually now become the world's biggest retailer. But they didn't start off like that. They started off selling books, and they identified their core skill. And then they said, where can we take that core skill? Or who else will that core skill appeal to that is prepared to pay us for our expertise? Because that's what you're doing all as businesses. You're looking to get people to pay you for your expertise to solve problems they have. And that's why it's not necessarily about a specific product or specific service. It's the skill set that lies behind that product or service. Does that make sense? Yeah, cool. So again, when you're doing this analysis of the business, think about it that way. Do a lot of blue sky thinking and blue ocean strategy. And for those that don't know, there's a speaker that talks about red ocean strategy and blue ocean strategy. And the analogy is red ocean strategy is this sea full of sharks where you're all fighting over a very small amount of meat. In other words, it's a small market, you're all fighting over it, plenty of blood in the water as people undercut each other and fight over a diminishing market. So it's not a nice place to be. It's where the print industry was about 10 years ago, and it probably hasn't. It's only recovered because so many companies went bust. Because what happened in the print industry, and I used to work there as well, was it wasn't a deliberate tactic, but what happened was the technology moved so quickly that when you were buying these new presses, so much quicker, so much better quality, and they were very expensive, so you had to load them with work to keep them busy. So everybody was retooling, and therefore the capacity in the market went up by 10 times within a 2-year period. Can you imagine that? The market didn't change. The market for printing was still the same size, but all of a sudden, the delivery side went up by a factor of 10. So then everybody started fighting red ocean over the bits that were left. So they would take on the contracts that would make them money, but because these presses, Heidelberg presses, had to run 24/7, they would fill it up with just break-even jobs, or sometimes even jobs making a loss, because it was cheaper to run the presses than to have them standing idle. And huge billion-dollar companies went bust because there was just too much competition. So that's red ocean. Blue ocean is where you take something that you're good at, that you know you're good at, and you take it into a marketplace you've never been before, and that at this point in time, there's no other competition. Now, the competition will follow you. You don't have these things forever. The competition will, because once they see how smart you are, that's why you have an Uber Eats and a Just Eat and a Deliveroo. There's not one company in that market, but there was the first company that went in, made a fortune, and everybody else says, Christ, that's easy. There's not big barriers to entry, let's jump in. But getting in there first establishes you as a brand, you build the relationships, you're the first mover. But it's just about finding, where do I take my core skills that we're really good at into some place where we haven't gone before. But we don't have to change the skills. We're just selling the same skills and the same expertise to somebody else. Not saying it's easy, but if you can find that, you can have dramatic growth in your business and your organization, because you're not having to make huge investments. I remember a marketing director in Yale once saying to me, her role was to fail cheaply. And what she meant by that was, again, as the marketing director, she's not there to maintain the brand or just to keep the services all the same. She's there to find new things to offer and new things they can do. So her view was, I should be introducing a new product or service every month during the year. But in order to do that, what I can't do is spend 6 months developing it, throw £1 million at it to get a prototype out the other end. What I have to do is come up with something quick and dirty and go out and try it with a few people. And if it starts to get traction, start putting the investment in. And if it doesn't, close it down, fail cheaply. Because it's just like, you read about most investment organizations, the private equities of this world that we all think are thieves because they steal all the money from the poor firms. But actually, they tend to have only a success rate of 1 in 10. So, they're investing all this money in the hope that one comes off, and the other 9, they might not lose too much. So it is a same kind of theme in terms of fail cheaply. So, don't come up with something that you think is a great idea and you wait and you develop and you polish and you make it just absolutely as good as it could be before you take the wrappers off it, because it could still be a failure. Great example, and then for those of you that are old enough, the Sinclair C5. Jesus, the money that was spent on that without just going to the market and seeing, would anybody ever buy this? And then when it was launched, it was just a total disaster and they lost millions. Whereas, when they were building the prototype, few bicycle wheels, knocking some batteries together and taking it out there, within the first few weeks, everybody has said, you must be off your head. I'm in this electric trike, 2 feet off the ground with a flag waving in the air that it's going to take me for 5 miles, and there's a big truck up my rear end. No, don't see this as a real future of the transport. But you get the message, you get the idea, things like that. So take the time, involve as many people as you can, involve clients if you can, involve suppliers if you can. Just get as much insight into other people's views of the business. And then, having identified the core skills, just think about where else can we go. Blue sky it. Where else can we go with this? Where can we take it? Where can we take the market? Because that's your low-hanging fruit. And if you can get a couple of wins out of that, it can have a very quick and major impact for the business. Step 3, the company vision. Yeah, this is when you're actually starting to say, okay, where do we want to go as a business? What do we want to do? We've got a lot of information from the key stakeholders. Hopefully we can paint a picture that says this is what we need to do to align what they want and how we believe the business is going to go forward. Because sometimes your key stakeholders would be investors who, could have as clear a picture as just go make me more money, which is what a lot of them do, as opposed to if it's your business and you found it, you say, this is my purpose, this is my why, this is why I want to do this. But it's about aligning people to create the vision. In terms of the vision itself, there's kind of, I think, some key things to a vision. And again, vision's an awful grandiose word. It's a goal. It's where we're going to go with this. It's putting a time scale on it. And it's doing something that says so many months, years, whatever from now, we're starting at A, this is what B looks like, or this is where we want to go. And that's kind of all it is. I think personally it's important that it's measurable. And to me, this differentiates a vision from a purpose statement or a mission statement. And I think mission statements aren't quite in vogue just now, whereas purpose statements are. This is our purpose as a business. This is why we were put on this planet. Sorry, I'm being a bit cynical. This is the purpose of the organization. This is what we want to do, which is great. But to me, the vision is closer to a goal. Therefore, it has to be measurable. So therefore, to just say, I don't know, we want to be bigger tomorrow than we are today isn't much of a vision statement. Whereas if you actually said we want to grow our revenues by 200%, or we're a UK-based company, our vision is to move into Africa and the Middle East in the next 3 years, that's a vision, because you'll know if you've done it or not. Because to me, a vision doesn't work if you don't know when you've reached it. if you don't have an end point, or at least you can't measure yourself on the journey to get there, because then it's not a vision, it's a wish. It's, I wish we were 3 times as big. I'm sure we all do. But what's the vision? How are you going to get there? How are you going to make it? And what does it look like? So I think it should be measurable. You do have to absolutely, if you believe in company values, and that sounds a bit more negative than I meant it to be. If you have values as a business, you have to make sure your vision's aligned with those values. Now, my personal view in values is take them or leave them. I don't think they're essential for a business, which a lot of people are horrified to hear. But we all need values. Yes, and some values are inherent, but do you actually need to state those values? Because again, and it sounds very negative, but I think if you actually have to tell people what your values are, you've kind of missed the point. You hire people for values. You hire the type of people that you know share your vision, share the same time of goals. If you actually have to say people, right, one of our values is respect. So if you come into this business, I don't want you, bad mouthing people. Well, why would you want to hire somebody that's going to bad mouth people? You have to tell them that, really? You can't go through an interview and tell them. So I think depends on the culture. I'm not saying you shouldn't have values, and I think values work. And I know there are a couple of businesses where the values really live them, and they demonstrate them, and they're very powerful. And that is the plus side of having values. The negative side of having values is if you have values and you don't live by them, and certain key individuals in your organization don't live by them but get away with it, which happens, then it's worse than not having values. Brian, were you wanting to make a comment?
Don't know. So I led our culture and values initiative at Data Lab to get it all started.
Yep.
And then we embedded it across everything we do, right? So any job
Yep.
advert, any interview, we asked,
Yep.
do you know what our values are? If they don't, then that's a warning flag to us.
Yep.
Any money we give out, joining, all of this stuff. And we've got a culture group now, and it rotates every 6 months. So one of the senior team move on to that and lead it, and there's a rep from all the groups. We revisited this January, and people were feeding back to us like that was saying that one of the strongest things of being part of our organization was the culture and the values, and that values, when they're written down, can be a bit of paper, but actually people across the organization were using them as a kind of compass or an anchor to help each other.
Yeah.
And I found that really, really powerful, because you can't really ask for more than that at the end of the day. And we did experience, though, the point that you made, there was one particular person who was senior in our organization who didn't live by them. And what happened with that person is they stuck out like a completely sore thumb, and they knew they did. And inevitably they left. But when we reflected on that, they left by their own accord, and we should have done other things, although there's limitations on what we can do. But yeah, they do stick out. But ultimately, if they do, you need to provide a mechanism for their either to change or to go.
Yeah. How many values, if you don't mind me asking, do you have, Brian?
4. We
Good.
failed the first time. The first time we did it, it didn't work.
Right.
And that was because we came up with values that were wordy and they just not stick in your head. And then the people that came up with them then listed about 15 example behaviors for each one, and we scrapped that. There's no stickiness on it.
Yeah.
And I think we summarized it right up. And the way we did that is we got the team all involved, and we sat around and brainstormed it out, and then worked out what was right for us. And then to your communication bit, we just over communicated all the time on it. And we use it now in our annual reviews. So you have to explicitly say, give examples of how you've embraced the values in delivering your work in the last year and all that kind of stuff. And we use it for difficult conversations as well.
When people aren't living by the values.
Yeah. So we've personally found it, I think, really useful, and it's a really useful thing for me to lead on, because I learned from what went wrong the first time when we
Yeah.
tried it and trying another approach to do it. And it was interesting because we were giving updates to the board at the time, and they were really drilling us on it, because a couple of them had rolled them out to significantly scaling organizations. So they were giving us input on how we do it and should do it and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely, I'm one for values.
Good.
To say.
Yeah, no, and it sounds like you've done it the right way, which is important. And more importantly, it's something you constantly refer to and you constantly use as a tool, which is great. I think it does vary from company to company. And I know it sounds I'm not against them. I don't think they're essential for every organization. But as a yardstick and as a measure, and if you're using them and if everybody lives by them, yeah, they can be very, very powerful. And the fact you use them in every aspect of your business, I think, is great. And I think it's a really strong thing. But, just make sure they're also aligned with the vision. So there's not any diversity between here's our values, but this is what we're planning to do as a business. Yeah.
Yep.
Anybody else got a comment round about values? No? Okay. The vision itself, the main purpose of a vision is to motivate and challenge people, I believe. It's to share the goal, which hopefully creates a passion within people to help you get there, and challenges them to help you get there. So there's that motivational element of it that's very important. But in the same way as Brian was talking about not having, lots of wordy values, I think a company vision should also be very succinct. I almost see a good company vision as being like a strap line for an ad, that it's, we will do this in X years, or we will raise to what, just something very simple, because in the same way as Brian was talking about the values, if there's too wordy, people aren't going to remember them. And part of your company vision is you want people to remember it. You want them to be part of it. You want them to embrace it, because you want it to be a motivator. You want it to be something good that's going to happen within the business and drive the business on. So yeah, it's hard to come up. And again, let's be honest, I don't know how many businesses didn't have a 2020 vision, because 2020 vision, it all fitted nicely. So you made something up to match the 2020 rather than necessarily what you were doing with the business. So many people talked about, by 2020 we're going to have 20 million turnover, we're going to have 20% profit, we're going to have this 202 people in the organization. People were they started at the wrong end. Rather than say what's the vision and let's find a way of succinctly saying that, because 2020 was such an easy thing to tag onto, they started with 2020 and then the vision went backwards. But just having something that is succinct, that is, as I say, like a strap line, I think is very useful. And again, it's something, when you create a vision for the business, when you create the goal, it's something you can share out with the business. I don't think visions are purely internal things. I think they're good to share with clients, they're good to share with suppliers, because it shows people that you have aspirations and goals. And let's be honest, most visions are about growth. So it shows you that, you want to go somewhere, you want to take this business and you want to make it better in whatever form that is. And sharing that with people that work with you, partner you, deal with you on a regular basis is a good thing, I think. I think it's a positive thing. So I think actually taking that vision when you've got it and using it and making it visible, and depending what industry, slapping it on the side of vans, putting it on headed note paper, all that kind of stuff, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing, because it also shows that you have a genuine belief in the vision, and that as a company you're going to work hard to deliver it because you're putting it out there. So it's a bit about what we talk about in this stage in terms of accountability. The more people you make a commitment to, the more likely you are to achieve it. And you're making a kind of public commitment when you say this is what we're going to do, and you put it out there for everyone to see. Do all of you or any of you have, I know, Brian, you're in the process of redoing your strategy. Do you have a current succinct company vision that you'd be prepared to share with us? Or let me rephrase it, that you're not embarrassed to share with us? No? Nobody get visions?
We've got a mission. I was interested in your point to say that a vision was miserable. Yeah, a vision was miserable, but the mission was the kind of big piece.
Yeah, purpose. Start calling it purpose. That's the N word. Purpose.
Sorry. But we don't have a well, because obviously, as you know, we're in the middle of redoing it, but we don't have a miserable doing that kind of vision type stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Nobody else? Oh, hey, a lot of work to be done, guys.
I suppose it's a purpose statement. I'm not, and here's the thing, I'm not sure I always agree with it, but we use it in everything, and it forms the back. So and it's really succinct and it ticks a lot of boxes for it. So basically, our company purpose is to connect customers with their funerals.
Yes.
Right. Now
Sorry. Yes.
That's
brilliant.
Right?
I love that.
It's nuts. But I always struggle with it. I drive Karen absolutely bonkers because I'm just like, is that the mission though? I'm not sure it is, but that is essentially that is our mission statement, if you like. That's the backbone of our strategy documents. It's there. What is our purpose? It is to connect customers to funerals.
I personally, I enjoy it because I've got a warped sense of humour. So I think that's really good. And the other thing is that, to be fair, it's memorable.
It is. Yeah? There is that.
It's memorable.
Yes.
I didn't even know that one. That's great.
Yes, there you go.
I'll not forget that now.
You won't.
Shows you how good it is.
Yeah.
Mark, sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say that it says it all, really, but I know we've got one. I couldn't tell you what's on it.
You don't know what it is.
I couldn't tell you where it is, exactly. So, I was thinking about that while you were talking about it, actually. I was thinking I can picture the document and the layout of it, and the fact that it's got like 6 month, 9 month, 3 year goals on it, but couldn't tell you any of the content because it's not discussed regularly whatsoever.
Right. Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, about this, and we'll come on to that and talk about selling the vision and about how often you discuss it. Right. Probably take a quick break now. I've had you on for a while. Maybe come back at 3:15. Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Cool. See you then. Yeah. So I'm doing this for Mark, by the way, Brian, just so you know, because you'll have seen it, Gillian's seen it, and poor Mark hasn't seen it. So I said I'd record what we're doing today for him, but I've missed half of it out, so you need to fill in the blanks for him. Anyway, so breaking it down into bite-sized chunks, and I think, as I said, 3 months, a quarter is a good size. So you can lay out your plan, and therefore you can do it at a high level very quickly, because if you're doing an 18-month plan, that's just 6 quarters. And you can start to identify within those quarters what needs to be done to move it from quarter 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, so that by the end of quarter 6, you've reached your goal. So breaking it down into bite-sized chunks starts to make it more real, and it also starts to let you see in a bit of detail what you're going to have to achieve, and therefore you can check it and say, is this reasonable? Does this make sense? Or are we kind of like reaching for the moon? Although that's a great example when we talk about 10-year strategies, because from Kennedy making his famous speech about how they were going to put a man on the moon, they did that in under 10 years. So who needs a 10-year strategy? If you can go from nothing with no technology, no way of understanding it, to putting a man on the moon in less than 10 years, what use is a 10-year strategy? Just whack it on and get out there. So anyway, again, another technique I like to use is, if you're a business that has just a single revenue stream, then that's relatively easy to do the planning for. If you have a business that is multiple revenue streams, then it's quite a good technique to actually do a business plan for each revenue stream, almost independent. And the reason that works is, well, several reasons. One, it's kind of easier to do because you're saying, this is the revenue stream for product A or service A. We know how many we're selling. We know what we're charging for them. We know what the costs are. We know for the profitability. We want to grow it in X, Y, and Z. Also, when you aggregate them together, the aggregation actually creates a worst case. Because let's say in each mini business plan, I need 10 people here. Actually, when you pull it all together as an organization, you maybe don't need 20, you maybe need 18. But if you've got 10 in each business plan, if anything, your costs are going to be less than you're projecting, not more. So it creates a bit of a worst case scenario, which hopefully you will always beat at every opportunity. The other thing is when you have multiple revenue streams, the risk if you just do it all as a global business plan initially without having that detail in between is you lose sight of where your highest margins are and where your lowest margins are. And you could end up with part of the business losing money while the rest is making more money, but overall it looks fine and everybody just goes, yep, we're hitting our target, we're hitting our goal, it's all wonderful. Whereas if you do have these multiple revenue streams and you do a series of mini business plans and you monitor them as mini business plans, one starts to go wrong, you'll focus on fixing it because the others are going fine, or vice versa, or you'll change it. So again, that's more based on where you have multiple revenue streams rather than just a single revenue stream. And it just gives you more visibility. But again, you don't have to go down into huge levels of detail. It's kind of like the top line headers. It's the usual stuff that you would see in a set of management accounts, labor, materials, capital, blah, blah, blah. It's that kind of thing you're looking to collect and gather. You're not looking to know how many pencils each part of the business is going to be using or forecast using for the next 18 months. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about kind of a high level, major category type spend and income areas. So here's an example of one that looks very complicated because it is quite complicated, but it's actually was a simple thing to do because this was a business that sold capital equipment or does sell capital equipment. And as you can see, each piece of capital equipment costs about £2 million. So in a 12 million turnover business, you're only selling 6 things a year. So it's easy. What a great business to be in. The fact that each one costs 2 million and takes about 9 months to deliver is by the by. But the benefit of this, what we did with this organization was by breaking it down in this way. This is just an example of one of 3 different products they sold. And what we did is we broke it down into a fair amount of detail. So you've got there, here's all the fabrication costs, the direct man hours into different categories. And what we did was we then took this for the different types of products and we looked at what our forecast was based on current interest. And we also looked at what that was doing to the demand for labour. And we found some of the other products had a totally different mix of direct labour man hours, and it was causing horrendous peaks for labour. I talked about the CGI company. This was doing the same thing for labour. So there was horrendous peaks and troughs, and it was difficult to get the skill sets. It was difficult to maintain people, and obviously, if they weren't busy, they couldn't afford to pay them because these were highly skilled people. So we came up with what may seem a very bizarre strategy, but our strategy was we then took the different products and we looked at maximizing our steady flow of labor, if I can put it that way. So in other words, how do we eliminate the peaks and troughs and how do we kind of maintain a steady flow? And the best way to do that was actually to stagger when we were building the different pieces of capital equipment. And what that helped us do by pushing that out for 18 months, and actually in this case, we did it for like 2.5 years because of the 9-month lead time. We actually then tasked the sales team with selling particular products within particular windows of opportunity. And given that this is £2 million capital, your client wasn't saying, I need it and I need it next week. you know, they were coming back and saying, okay, so we've got this project, it was in oil and gas, we've got this project coming up in 2 years' time. We want this equipment. When do we need to order it? And the sales guys, because we'd done this strategic projection to really smooth things out and maximize our efficiency, were able to say, well, for that piece of equipment, you need to order it in March, a year in advance. Or for this piece of equipment, you only need to order that 9 months in advance. And it meant that actually what that did was add quite a significant increase to the bottom line, because we weren't hiring and firing. We didn't have people standing about doing nothing. We didn't have to retrain, reskill, rehire, recruit. We could just have this nice, steady workflow. Now, that's not going to work in all businesses, but I guess what I'm just trying to demonstrate from that is, by looking at separate revenue streams, it's not just a case of how much do I want to generate from each one. It's where do we have an overlap in skills? Where do we have essential skills that maybe each of them need, but they're hard to get? So therefore, we have to maximize the skills we have. And you can actually do a lot by controlling and managing your lead times for the products to make you more efficient, rather than always respond or react to the client. Now, obviously, you know, consumer goods don't work this way anywhere close. You know, I want them now. But if you're at this opposite end of the market, it really doesn't make a lot of difference for a big player to sign a contract 15 months in advance, or a year in advance, or 9 months in advance. What's important to them is they know that capital equipment will be available when they want it to go operational. And it was actually, again, this sounds daft, it was actually cheaper for us to build some of these and store them for 6 months, fully finished, than it was to actually increase our labour, find more cranes to move stuff about, find more warehouses. But you know, it just, running the business efficiently made it worthwhile. And therefore the sales team had, and they loved it to a certain extent as well, because they had, I guess, as close as you can for a sales team, have fixed targets. I've got to sell this piece of equipment within this window, this piece within this window, this piece within this window, and that's how they conducted it. So it is, there are different things you can do with what I just call mini business plans, and putting all that together. Again, 5-packet stuff. This is just an example. There's 3 different products. This is going out for 2 years. And here's our plan, and here's where we're expecting the revenue to come. And we've aggregated it. So here's the total revenue, total cost, and net profit. And that's what we're trying to do as a business. And in the early stages of putting together a strategy, this is kind of the level that's okay to be at. Because underneath that, yes, will be the full set of management accounts that goes with it. But if your management accounts and your products are meaningful, in other words, the people that are doing them know what they're doing, then actually aggregating it into total revenue, total cost, and net profit is fine. Because what lies underneath that, I'm not saying you want to ignore, but you're comfortable that, you know, 6 of those, and 20 of those are going to cost us 1.15 million. Because that details work's already been done in the mini business plan or whatever. The other good thing about having it at this kind of aggregated level and simple level is, this is something you can show to people in the business. This is something when you're talking about the vision, you know, because the vision here, obviously, is to take the company from year one, a revenue of 350,000, to grow it almost tenfold to 3.2 million. That's the vision. That's the timescale. There's the measurables. There's our goal. There's how long we're going to have over. And by the way, this is how we're going to do it. And here we're going to grow this product. We're going to grow this product that we haven't even introduced yet. This is a new product. We're going to do it. It tells a story. It tells a story of the vision, but at a simple enough level that everybody hopefully can understand it and know what it means and see where it's going. Does that make sense? Cool. So it's this idea of having detail where you need it, and having a kind of macro level where you're going to use it to communicate, or where you're doing the what I call the sanity check on the whole thing. One of the things that often comes out that you need to be aware of and careful with is we're great at the resource side in terms of people. We're usually not too bad in terms of equipment, but we're rubbish in terms of floor space. People often forget, so they'll plan to grow the business from 20 to 50 people and forget that means they're going to need a new office, or forget they're tied into a 10-year lease with the 20 people office they've got, and there's nothing else in the neighbourhood, and it's going to take them 12 months to find something. So one way to compensate for that, or to remind yourself for that, is actually to kind of take these plans and work them backwards. So when we put this together, we started here, we built it up. When you're looking at resources and when you need resources, take the plan at this end and work it backwards. And by that, I mean, this is where we're going to be at the end of year 2, but at what point in time do we need a new office? Because if we need the new office in Q2 of that year, we actually now need to start looking for it in Q3 of the previous year. So it allows you to start building in the lead times you need to make these decisions. If, for instance, we're building an organization, we've got 50 people just now, we're doing fine, we're going to reach 200 people, brilliant. How many extra people are we going to need to help manage the 200 people? Because it's not a case of, if we've got a ratio of 1 supervisor to 10 people, we just need, another 15 supervisors or whatever. Okay, who's looking after the 20 supervisors you've now got? Because you actually don't have a management level. So maybe you need 3 or 4 managers now. You've now got 200 permanent staff in your organisation. Does someone need to do the payroll? Do you need an HR manager? Do we have a big enough car park? All these things that we tend to not think about need to be considered when you're looking at your overall strategy and you're building this roadmap. And by working backwards, what it allows you to do is kind of pinpoint in each quarter, here's the actions I need to take. And it could be as simple as, yep, I need to start looking for new office premises. You're not signing for them there and then, but you're maybe giving yourself 3 to 6 months to find something suitable at a cost you can afford in a location that's going to be useful for you. I need to hire an HR manager. Okay, well, that's going to probably take, if I'm honest, 4 months. During the interview, people had in notice periods, everything else. So I need to actually start that process 4 months before I think, according to the plan, I'm going to need it. So that working backwards just helps you do all that. And again, it's just a nudge. It's just a step that quite often we forget and we don't go through. And then there's a mass panic because somebody suddenly says, how are we going to cope with all these people? Who's ordered the desks? Who's ordered the laptops? Who's got the office? How many car parking spaces have we got? And it's just not one that's front of mind. That I would just say to people, by taking your plan and working it backwards from a resource point of view, you can create it front of mind. So look at that. And then the ultimate thing is the sanity check, is actually just going through the whole plan with the key players, the key functions, to say, right, so we've talked about it, we've put together the detail, this is it. Do we, as the key stakeholders, agree this is doable? Now, not doable in an easy way, but doable with a fair wind, with a bit of luck, and if everything comes off. Because again, I know we talk about big, hairy, audacious goals, which are fantastic, but they're also a bit, nah, really? Whereas you want a goal that is going to stretch people and is going to really make a significant difference to the business, but that you also think has a degree of realism in it. Because nothing is worse than setting someone or sharing a vision or goal with somebody that they just look at it and they go, never in a month as Sundays. Not motivational, not challenging. And what do we say at the start? Should be motivational and challenging. So it's got to be at least looks like something we can do, and here's all the things we have to do to make it happen. But they're, you know, and that's why breaking it down quarter by quarter, it becomes reasonable, because you don't go from, you know, 350,000 turnover to 3.2 million turnover. Just that's the 2 points at the end of the graph and there's nothing in between. You need to build it up. And as you're building it up, you see if you're on track, you're off track, you need to work harder, you're doing okay. You're allowed to monitor it. But if you map out to people that if we do this, this, and this, we'll get there, it's not easy, but it's doable, then that to me is a real goal and a real vision. As opposed to, you know, so as often happens, the vision that comes out is we've just been bought by equity partners. So within the next 4 years, we have to quadruple our turnover so they can sell us and get their money back. Oh, fantastic. How are we going to do that? Well, we haven't quite worked that out yet, but when we have, we'll let you know. But we just wanted to share the vision. You know, phone me back when you can give me some reality. So you've got to bear that in mind, because when you're communicating with people, again, maybe I'm worse than others, but we tend to be a bit cynical with things like that. And we tend to look at it and go, really? Whereas if you can then say, yeah, really, and here's how, and you, oh, okay, that makes sense. All right, I can do that. So that's the kind of sanity checking phase. And it's essential, obviously, that you do that and you have that buy-in with your key stakeholders, because they all 100% have to be on board. Once you go through the rest of the organization, I'm not saying it's less important, but it's less important. But your key stakeholders absolutely have to be on board with this and make sure they're happy. So that's putting the roadmap together. Then we have the key element of selling the vision, and it is selling. It's selling it to people. We're not going out there or we shouldn't go out there and say, this is what we're going to do. And everybody just goes, yay, fantastic. I get it. Yep, brilliant. People are going to want to know a bit of detail. They're going to want to know, is it reasonable? They're going to want to know what their role is. They're going to want to know what it means for the organization, for the business. So you have to sell it, and you have to sell it in a bit of detail. So in terms of the whole point and what round about selling the vision, again, we're back to this. It's about engaging people. It's about motivating and challenging people. My view is, again, depending on the size of the organization, there's kind of three elements, or three perhaps stages. One is the engaged stage, which is the people that were kind of working on the plan, which again should be the key stakeholders. It shouldn't just be one individual or two individuals on the board or whatever. It should be the people who you have identified within the business are the key stakeholders that work on this together. The second stage, I think, is then if you then have a layer of middle management or junior management, you take it down at that level and you show them what you've put together. Yeah, you show them the straw man. You do a series of workshops, depending on the numbers involved, where you say to people, this is what we've done so far. This is what we believe is the way forward for the business. This is what we believe is the key elements, the key actions, the growth, the development, everything we're going to do. What do you think, guys? And let them critique it. Because, again, depending on the size of the organization, it's the people in those positions that are actually going to be the ones that are going to deliver this for you. They're the doers. Yeah. They're the ones that are going to make it happen, that are going to deal with the shop floor, that are going to deal with the customer service girls, that are going to deal with whoever's in the business and make it actually happen. So make them feel part of it. Don't just tell them, share with them. And again, what you'll probably find is there maybe has been something you've missed. Yeah, because there's a slightly different view from the coalface than there is from the penthouse. So let them talk about it, let them in. And if you've got a lot of people and it's a slow process, just build in time for it. You know, you don't think you have to go in and you do 1 half-hour meeting and that's it done. Give people time to think about it. Yeah, to gestate, to come back to you and say, I've thought about, actually, you know what, this occurred to me, that occurred. So you might have 2 or 3 workshops, 2 or 3 sessions. Listen to what people have to say, because at the end of it, what you want is that and I'll call them middle management, that middle management layer also to be on board. You also want them to believe in it, to think it's the right thing to do, to think it's achievable, and they know they've got to play a part. Then if you're in a large organization, the last area is actually the opposite of what I just said, which is you're actually just going to tell people this is what we're doing. But you're going to share enough detail, and if I go back to that, the chart I had with the 3 products and the overall thing per quarter, you give them enough information so they have more understanding. This is what we're going to do. You don't just say, we're going from 350 to 3.2 million in 2 years. Brilliant. You say, we're going to do this, and we're doing it by introducing a new product line, building up these product lines. We're going to do this, X, Y, Z, so that people have an understanding. So there's kind of 3 levels. There's the people that put the initial straw man together. There's the ones that get to critique and buy in and amend, so they feel they're part of the decision-making organization. And then there's the rest of us, the troops, who just get told this is what we're doing, but you actually still take the time to explain how we're going to do it, what actions we're going to do every quarter to make this happen. And you do all that to get buy-in and alignment. You do all that because the more people believe in it and the more people are aligned with the vision and the goal, the more likely it is a success. Nothing guarantees success, but the more of these things you do, you increase your chances, I believe, of delivering a successful goal, successful business plan, vision, whatever you want to call it. The last one there, the sharing success tangibly, that comes down to a key question, which as leaders of the business, you have to be able to answer. And that key question when you're presenting the new vision strategy to the organization is, what's in it for me? You have to be in a position that when somebody in, let's call it the crowd in the organization at a different level, stumps up and says, okay, I hear this, fantastic, sounds wonderful, but what's in it for me? Because at the end of the day, that's what we kind of all want to know. You know, I always use the example of an owner-managed business where somebody owns the business 100% and says, right, guys, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do the other thing, we're going to increase the profits, we're going to go and make all this money. And everybody sits and goes, you mean you're going to make all this money? What am I getting out of it? Why am I going to knock my pan in to get you to go from your Ford Focus to a Ferrari? Not much in that for me. Now, that's very black and white, but there still is the need, I think, to overtly share with people, and this is what this means for you. Now, it can mean a tangible amount, you know, you could set up bonus schemes. I've done that in the past based on growth, based on different things. A lot of companies are moving over 5-10 years to employee ownership. There's whole lots of different things. Some of it can be as simple as more job security. You know, as we grow this business and we get bigger, that means everybody has more job security. As we grow, as we grow this business from 5 supervisors to 15 supervisors, some of you sitting in the audience today, there's an opportunity to become a supervisor, to pursue your career. We'll be looking for managers we don't have today. There's an opportunity. So some of it's about creating opportunities for career progression. Some of it can be about job security. Some of it might be, we're going to share our success by introducing a bonus scheme. You know, there's a raft of ways of doing it, but you just have to be able to, I think, answer the question, what's in it for me? And not wait for it to be asked. Actually be proactive and say to people, this is what it means for you. Because that's how you get people to buy in. Now, they still might not like the answer. You know, they still might say, yeah, but I'd rather have an extra couple of grand. Sorry, we can't do that. But at least you have overtly said to them, this is what we see. This is why it's a benefit for everybody. And the vast majority of people will be happy with that. And the ones that aren't maybe have the wrong attitude and should be off the bus anyway. But just be able to answer that question, what's in it for me? Don't wait for some wag in the crowd, and there's always one to ask, and be kind of, yeah, no, not sure. So this is why, back to the planning stage, plan and how you're going to sell the vision to people. because it really is important, I think. So, done the thinking, done the planning. Now we're into executing the strategy. And I think the current stats are 70% of strategies fail. There you go. So there's a good motivational statement from me to get you dead keen to put a strategy together. Oh, well, wait a minute. If I do 3, if I do 4, one of them might work. So it's not like that. Obviously, what you're doing through all this whole process is you are doing the right things to increase your chance of delivering the strategy and the plan. And that's why so much of this is to do with employee alignment, because it's getting people wanting to bring their best selves to work. It's getting people to understand where the company's going and actually wanting to be a part of that and understanding their part in it and how they can help make the whole thing successful. And again, this is why I talked about daily activity, so that everything everybody's doing in the business, we can show them how that's part of the overall vision and the overall strategy. And I'll just touch on that in a second through this idea of action plans. So if I talk about 90-day action plans, some of you I'm sure will have come across this before. It's more often than not used at a senior level. My view is it's easy and it's really useful for every single person in your business to have their own 90-day action plan. Everybody. Now, whether that's you're a construction business and the plasterer and joiner have their own 90-day action plans, you're in manufacturing and the turner has his own 90-day action plan, doesn't matter. It's possible to give everybody a 90-day action plan, and that's one of the visual ways of showing people where their role is in delivering the overall strategy. So if I just very quickly explain what a 90-day action plan is for those that aren't aware of it, it's a very simple management tool, which, as the word says, spells out for the next 90 days what I need you to do. Now, how we cascade it down through the organisation is it starts at the top level in the business, where the board or the senior management team each have something they have to achieve in the next 90 days, which comes directly from your strategic roadmap. Because remember, we're chunking that in 90 days of action and activity. So within the first quarter, here's all the things, guys, we as a senior management team have to do and have to deliver to be on track for the strategy. So it's almost already there. So that's your starting point. Then what you do is you cascade it down through the organization. So in this simple example, the director level guy has to get 3 new contracts for sales. He has a team of 3 people, funnily enough, each of whom will go chase 1 each. Yeah, so very simple example. How we use it to best effect is you allow the person who you're giving the 90-day action plan to own it. And when I say own it, I mean they update it. They tell you where they are. They give you a status. Now, varies dramatically. If you're on the shop floor and you're producing widgets, you want a daily status. If you are in a sales organization whose lead times to build contracts is 6 months or so, you maybe want a monthly update or a quarterly update, who knows. You decide how often and how frequently the action plan needs to be updated. But there's a couple of crucial boxes in there. One is obviously who's leading it, who's responsible. Yep, this is your responsibility. The second one is the support. Quite often we forget that it's not about what we do on our own as a function. It's what we do in conjunction with other parts of the business, and the fact that either we need support from other parts of the business or we need to support them. And by calling out that support when you put the action plans together, it starts to let you see if there's any conflicts. So let's say there's one person, one key guy in the organization has a particular skill set, and sales need them, and production need them, and finance need them. Not going to work because you can't cut them in 3. Yeah, this is one guy. But by calling that out up front, then when you look at the detail of the plan, you can say, well, all right, here's the resource we need. What's the minimum you need? When do you need them? What's the minute? And we either change the schedule, for want of a better word, or we're very quickly flagging up we need more resource, or two out of the three of us may well fail. So that's one that often doesn't appear in action plans that I would push heavily towards you to say you need to also record who do you need to help you deliver these things. The final box there at the end is just my love of visuals, and I love RAG stuff, as they call it, red, amber, green, because what it means is you can manage a large group of people very easily if you give them the responsibility to make the status a quick colour. So rather than a whole bunch of words in a written report, green if everything's going okay, amber if we're not quite on plan, but I, as the owner of the action, I'm confident we're going to deliver it by the end of the quarter, and red is a call for help. It's not a failure, it's not we can't make it happen, it's something's going wrong or it's not working and I need help. So let me focus on that first. It's about creating a culture in the business where we don't blame people, we help people. And the reason you want to create that culture is you actually want to encourage people to call out as early as possible when things are going wrong. Because if they call it out early enough, you've got time to fix it. If they wait and they're frightened if they call it out, they're going to get told they're an idiot or they're rubbish or they're no use. I guarantee you they will wait to the day before the end of the quarter when they probably knew a month ago that it wasn't going to happen, but they didn't want to call it out, and you have no time to correct it and get it back on plan. So the earlier people declare it red status, the quicker you can fix it. So it should be seen as a cry for help, not as a failure and not as an opportunity to blame somebody for doing something wrong. If you have somebody in your organization who never does anything and they're always red, different issue. You have performance issues then. Yeah, and then you address them as performance issues. You still don't blame them for calling it out red. You just get pissed off that everybody else is fixing it for them, so therefore they're not doing their job properly, and that's a performance issue. But if you can create a culture in your business that says, if I can forecast, if I know, a month away, this is just not working, I need help. It's like sending up the red flare, come and rescue me, I need help. And then you have the time to respond, and maybe you move things about or you bring in extra resource. You do what you have to do to hopefully try and fix it. Because again, this is all about making sure your strategy is working, that it's delivering, that it's on plan, and that everything you've said you needed to do in that quarter gets done in that quarter. So just ignoring it and letting it fall over into the next quarter, you're just going to end up with a domino effect, and the strategy is either just going to fail miserably or it's going to take twice as long to deliver. So this is about getting the whole thing early warning, fixing it, and keeping on track and keeping on plan. Think of it as on the roadmap and you get a flat tire. Not necessarily anybody's fault, but you've got a flat tire and you need to get another tire and you need help to fix it. Now, if you want to make sure, if you're 50 miles down the road and you've got another 100 miles to go, you want to fix the flat tire at the 50-mile gap. You don't want to wait till you're like just over the line, you've got no time to do anything. So think of it like that. It's about asking for help and about getting things done. The other reason I like the whole idea of a RAG status is, and this will sound daft, but it's true, they're dead simple to do. So you can do them on a Word document or you can do them on a spreadsheet, whatever you fancy, because it's just a bunch of boxes. But if you have, let's say you've got 50 people that down through the organization you're responsible for. They're not direct reports, but you're responsible for 50 people. And each one of those people has an A4 size sheet with actions on it for the 90 days. You can actually tell within probably 90 seconds who needs help, because you print them out and you flick through them, and you just look at the red ones. You leave the green, you leave the amber, because people have said they're going to sort that, and you focus on the red. So from a command and control point of view, it's dead easy to know where you've got to go to make a difference. But again, that only works where people are using red for help and not for blame. So that's the cultural piece. But it's dead easy to manage, you know, because people talk about, oh Christ, I've got 3,000 things to do this month. Well, if you've got 3,000 things and only 2 of them are red, just go, there you go, there's the red ones. That's the ones I zoom in on. So it's just a nice, keep it simple, easy way of managing your team, managing the people that report to you. And actually for the chief exec can use this. It's a great tool for him, because you get to a stage when you trust people and you have good people in your business that all you want to do is ask, who needs help? Everything's going great, who needs help? And that's focusing on the red ones to keep the plan in place. So highly recommend that. The other thing we talked about, having ownership in the business. If you think about this as a kind of cascading pyramid or waterfall, the top bit is the strategy. So that's the strategy document. It's there, it's published. We've got this mapped out for the next 6 quarters or 8 quarters or whatever, and we're focusing in the first quarter. We're then cascading that down to board level, and each of the board members has got their 90-day action plan. We're then cascading that down to middle management level, and each of the middle managers has got a 90-day action plan. We then cascade that down to the troops on the shop floor or at the front line, and they've all got a 90-day action plan. So when somebody says to you, yeah, this strategy stuff sounds great, but how is what I'm doing get anything to do with the strategy? It's very easy. You go, well, if you don't deliver what I've asked you to do by there, that has a knock-on effect to there, has a knock-on effect to there, has a knock-on effect to there, and the strategy fails. So your daily activity is delivering our strategy, and without your daily activity, the strategy will fail. We all have a part to play, and you can visually show them that, which I think personally is far more meaningful than just saying, no, everything, we've all got a part to play in everything we do. You can actually spell it out. And literally, if your daily activity is produce 40 widgets a day, if you're not doing your bit, then we're not meeting the next goal, and we can't, the strategy will fail because we haven't done the basics within the business. So it's a nice way, I think, of demonstrating to people that everybody in the organization and everything you do on a daily basis builds back upwards into the strategy. Any questions round about that? That was a lot of stuff to take in. No, all good? Either all good or all given up. Okay, I'll assume it's all good. The 6 key elements then are the roadmaps, the quarterly focus. So that's back to your strategic document, is making sure that you've assigned responsibilities to the senior managers for each key piece of that. Now, one I'll throw in here that is a bit random, but it depends how brave you are. It can be quite, I was going to say fun, it is fun. It can be quite interesting to actually swap functional responsibilities in terms of reporting, not in terms of allocating the action. So the operations director will work out the 90-day action plans for his next level, and so on and so on. So they'll do all that. But you then make the sales director responsible for reporting and how the operations group are doing. And you make the operations director responsible for how the sales group are doing. And the reason for doing that is it gives people a better understanding of each other's functions. For those that have been in those roles, they know that operations and sales are the two that clash the most, because the operations are making stuff and the sales guys aren't selling it quick enough, or the sales guys are selling it too quick and the operations guys can't keep up. Never works. It's never a smooth transition. So they're always banging heads. But actually swapping their responsibilities in terms of reporting, and just reporting, that, you know, it's not their job to fix it. They've just to report back to the board or report to, if you have a town hall meeting or something. It creates a bit more empathy, and it also lets them see, because again, if I'm the operations director and I'm reporting on the sales performance, and one of the reasons for red in the sales performance is because operations aren't delivering, Do you think I'm going to let that happen? I'm a buggery. I'm going to sort it out and make sure we come hell or high water, we do our bit. Whereas before I would sit back and say it was all sales fault because they came in too late, didn't give us a chance. But so when you're reporting each other, it's an interesting way of doing it, and it's about empathy, it's about responsibility, and it's also about learning about different parts of the business that you normally don't see or even understand. But that's just a wee throwaway I'll throw in there. Clear instructions, obviously, via the 90-day plans cascaded so that everybody's got one. Measure and report and using the KPIs, and I'll come on to that in terms of the measurement piece, because that's really important, but also is another trip area where people sometimes fall flat. And the important thing there about creating the culture of support and not blame, that's the red flag thing. It will not work if all you do is slag off people who do a red flag, or even their peer group slags them off and just say they're not capable. If they're not capable, different discussion. But if their genuine things are going wrong and they need help, help them, support them. So from that, you kind of have this idea of a quick response team. So when something's going wrong, that's where you kind of rally around and help fix it for a short period of time. Again, always over communicate. Look, try and take a coaching approach to this rather than appraisal. So it's not a case of, I've now got all this information, I know where you've done well and done badly, and I'm going to score you. This idea of appraisals being a score, I don't think is particularly helpful. Whereas the difference is, if you're coaching somebody, you'll be working with them to improve their skills or to identify areas where they need training and where their skills are lacking. So, you know, when you have a discussion around about, okay, so we didn't quite make that target, what was the problem, what went wrong? Is there something we can do to, you know, is it an issue with the process? Is it an issue with skill sets? Is it an issue with resource? That's a coaching approach. The appraisal approach as well, that didn't work, so I can only mark you down as 6 out of 10. What the hell? You know, why do you even bother? So try using to coach people, because again, there was a fantastic Vistage speaker from the States who was over here years ago. He's still around, Gary Markle, who has a coaching process called catalytic coaching. And I'll give you a reference to that later because I think it's fantastic. I've introduced it to a few businesses. And his view of appraisals was the only reason organizations have appraisals is because they need the legal backup when they sack somebody. That's it. Otherwise, because, you know, so what? You get an appraisal and you're told you're doing crap. Okay, I've now got that in writing. But more importantly, what are they going to do to help you? You get an appraisal tell you you're doing a fantastic job. Nice, but you know, so what? What are you going to do to help me? Coaching's all about helping people. Appraisal is all about, I think, rating them and scoring them. And you do that so that if you get taken to court for unfair dismissal, you've got a paper chain. So it's not a good reason for doing appraisals. In terms of sharing back to this communication, make sure progress is clear visibility. Make sure so everybody knows what's happening, how we're doing. I would suggest, because if you use this idea of a 90-day or 3-month timescale, I would suggest you have a town hall meeting, as they call it, an all employees meeting once a quarter to just say, well, you know, here's what we said we were going to do, here's what we've done. So we're either on plan, we're behind plan, or we're ahead of plan. It's bound to be one of the three. It can't be anything else. If we're on plan, well done, guys. This is now what we're going to do for the next quarter. If we're ahead of plan, even better, well done, guys. This is what we're going to do for the next quarter to help keep that momentum going. If we're behind, okay, we need to think up some ideas of how we're going to catch that back during the next quarter. Otherwise, we're in the domino effect and the whole thing just gets flown out. But just having that discussions and keeping everybody up to date. There's nothing worse than being told at the start of a strategy, this is what we're going to do for the next 3 years, and then hearing nothing after that. What was the point of that? You don't know. People have to know where they are. Is it going well? Is it not? Do we have to fix it? And it's easy to do. And just, you know, again, get that cadence of a 3-month. At the end of the 3 months, this is what we've achieved. Fantastic. This is now what we're going to do. Just remind everybody, this is what we have to do for the next 3 months. So it gives you the chance to look back and put a stake in the ground as where we are. And it also gives you the chance to remind people going forward. And then obviously they all get their individual 90-day action plans, which just reinforces what their part is. And the most important in anything like that is lead by example. And that's about the cultural aspect. That's about the helping, the supporting, the working together as a team and not as individuals. Measuring progress. So where are we? If it doesn't get measured, it doesn't get done. Yep, there you go. Classic, but true. A golden oldie, but a truism. So what do you want to measure? Well, there's the phrase KPI, as I'm sure you all know, means key performance indicators. Now, having been to a business not that long ago that measured it and controlled itself by KPIs, and so that's fantastic. How many KPIs have you got? 42. Sorry, 42. How in the hell do you need or have 42 key performance indicators? It's almost impossible. You almost can't think of that many, let alone that they're all key. The fact they're called key means you should have 4 or 5. That's it, they're key. Maybe 10 at the outside if you have a very complex business. But it's key. And ideally, again, I would suggest you want KPIs that are as much as possible unique to your business and tie them with the vision of your business. So, for instance, we talked about the vision needing to be measurable. If you have 1 or 2 measures in there, then by default, they have to be KPIs. Because if they're up there and that's what's going to drive the vision and that's when people know we're going to get there, they have to be KPIs. So that's maybe your starter for 1 or 2. You should definitely find ones that are unique to you. And when I say unique to you, I mean in terms of they mean something to everybody in your business, but they probably would mean nothing to anybody outside your business. Now, again, let me give you a couple of examples done in the past for businesses. One was an organisation that was in food wholesaling, so delivered to restaurants, chip shops, all that kind of stuff. And we were looking at, as I say, putting together some new KPIs and just trying to engage the guys in the shop floor. So we went out and spoke to the warehouse guys and just said, so how do you know when the business is going well? And they said, oh, that's easy. It depends on the number of boxes we have to load and how many trucks on a daily basis. And, you know, if we're doing X number, then we know things are going well. If we're doing Y, then it's even better. If we're doing Z, then, you know, sales are down. Brilliant. So we actually made that a KPI. And what we did was we got the guys in the loading dock to record it. So every day, at the end of every shift, they would report back the number of boxes they loaded. Didn't matter about the weight, didn't matter about the value. It was purely the number of boxes. Because when we analysed it further, what we discovered was because it sounds daft, but it's just because the boxes were all a standard size, what went in them was pretty much the same value to within about 3 or 4% when we looked at all individual invoices. So actually, we could very, very quickly, from just having the number of boxes, extrapolate by taking the number of boxes times the average value of a box, and there's what we shipped and invoiced today. And as I say, it ended up being within 3 or 4%, as opposed to I'm having to sit and add up 150 invoices, even off the machine, or make sure the invoices are correct and make sure people do this. And often, in fact, we find that when there was a big discrepancy and, you know, like 2 days further on, here's the invoices for that day versus what we were expecting. That's not right. And it was invoices that were wrong. It wasn't the bloody boxes. Boxes were fine. But we found there was a duplicate invoice or something hadn't been shipped that should have been. So it actually became a really accurate measure for the business. And we plotted what they call a statistical control chart. So here's our kind of average, what we expect to sell on a daily basis. And we plot it in boxes. And if we're above that line, we know we're doing better than budget. If we're below that line, we're doing worse. But overall, we know the trend and we know where we're going. and it engaged the guys in the warehouse, and it engaged the guys in the loading dock, who took great delight in coming into finance and saying, I think you'll find we've done 150,000 today. And they didn't have a clue. They were like a day later. So finding something that's unique to your business is really powerful. I did another one with a web design business that used to do, well, they still do, they did project work. So they did websites, and they were looking to get away from that, because as anybody knows that does projects, John will know this, you just don't see what's coming. At the most you look at about 3 months, and then for all you know, you could have zero income in month 4, because until someone signs a project and it moves on. So they were wanting to transition their business away from project-based to a kind of steady revenue stream. So we moved into digital marketing, whereby we would offer people support really for creating them as an authentic voice, as they call it, in the parlance of social media, which basically means putting out blogs, Facebook pages, Twitter, websites, data information, really just constantly, kind of a technical version of a PR agency, just constantly getting them in the spotlight and making them the go-to people. If you put in a keyword for printers, their name would come up, because here's our recommendation of the top 10 printers you should buy and why and everything else. So we developed that as a model, and we developed it as a subscription model. So you could buy either 6, 12 or 18 month contracts that they would produce. They would do all that work for you. And obviously, if you got 6 months, it was kind of a dearer per month than 12 months. And if you bought 18 months, it was the cheapest of all. And we worked out the value, because we charge everybody the same, the value of a contract month. And we looked at what we had been turning over in revenue and how many contract months we would need to replace that revenue. So our KPI became contract months. So every time somebody signed a contract, we were either adding 6 days to that, six to that total, or 12 or 18 to that total. And every month that moved forward, we were dropping off 1 month for forever contract we had. So it was a rolling number, but we were looking obviously for it to increase. And again, because it had a value, we could actually forecast almost a year and a half in advance what our revenue was going to be, because we've sold these contracts at that level, and we can work it out. So at the minimum, we're going to make this. We want to make this. So therefore, our selling has to be at this level to make up the difference. But it was the simplest thing in the world. Simplest thing. And after that, we really didn't worry too much about the management reports, because the management financial reports, we knew. We didn't need them to tell us. So finding a simple KPI, and yet, as I say, out with the business, both boxes, and that would have meant nothing to anybody. So if you want to have something that's highly visual in your premises, that you don't care if a competitor or supplier or anybody walks around, something like that is just perfect. You imagine it in a big screen. Today we have shipped 350 boxes. Somebody come into the business, goes like, so what? It's meaningless. But for your staff, if the norm's 320, they're going, yeah, beauty. What a good day that was. So I would challenge you all to spend the time to find something that's a unique KPI for your business, and maybe more than one. It's not easy. Finding one, I think, is reasonable. Finding more than one's a bit tricky. But try not to just use the same old shit that everybody else uses, because that's not meaningful to people. It's got to be something that's meaningful to people. Back again, alignment, engagement, challenge. The business has to be meaningful to people, and they have to say, this is great, and look, we've burst another target. But it's not all about financials. Very, very few people get a real buzz out of, we brought in an extra 10K this month. Okay, as a salesperson doing it, that's great. But for the rest of us, so what? Whereas if it's, I don't know, trying to think of one for John's business, we were planning to do 5 stores. We kitted out 6 this month. It's not about the money. It's about the number we did. We did 6. We were supposed to do 5. We did 6. Yeah, beauty. The number for the finances for all these things takes care of themselves. It's never been truer. If you're delivering a good service and you're selling, somebody's going to pay you for it. Don't worry about being paid for it. Make sure you deliver that good service and you repeat it and you do it as often as you possibly can. And then the money will come in. So taking people's heads away from the money and into this is our business and this is what we do is far, far more tangible. So again, I hope that makes sense. Again, encourage people to present your data in a highly visual format. It's nice if you've got, there's a couple of businesses that I've worked with that actually have real-time screens. So a lot of what they do is like shipping stuff. So, they ship it by barcode and everything, a bit like Amazon, what goes out the door, what goes out the door. And the big screen shows how many parcels, how many packages we've delivered now. And literally you can sit and watch it and it clicks up and it moves on and then it records. And, above it, you've got a summary of by day, by week, by month. This is what we're doing in real time. So data like that can be really useful again for people, just as a snapshot of where you are. But the counter to that is don't generate data for data's sake. Yeah. Again, those of you from an IT background that are old enough will remember when you generate a report and it would come about that thick and sprocketed paper and and everybody would want a copy each. So you denuded about 5 forests to get this stuff going round. And then you went to the meeting and you said, well, who's read the report? I haven't had time. Could you summarize it for me? How many people have come across that? So don't just generate it for data's sake. So be very particular about the KPIs you use, the small number, that they're really meaningful, and that the people you share them with appreciate them. Okay, how are we doing? Fine. This is just, again, another tool. These are what they call trailing trend charts. I said it right that time. I really struggle with that phrase, trailing trend charts. Yeah. Basically what you're doing with these is they're one of the few metrics that actually take historical data and project it forward to give you a prediction. And the way they do that is and you can use this for anything, by the way. You can use it for sales, for revenue, for profit, for numbers sold, anything you want. And all you're doing is you need, if you, let's say you're going to measure this over a 12-month period, what you do to start with is you need that historical data. So say you've got 12 months worth of data. You aggregate that data, divide it by 12, and that's your first point in the chart. Then the next month, month 1 drops off, month 13 gets added on, you aggregate that, divide that by 12, second point in the chart. So you see where this is going. And the way that works so well is it gets rid of seasonality. It gets rid of any spikes that are due to, I won't say plague, but things that are going horribly wrong. What it does is it just gives you an overall trend. So it takes a fair amount of data to get going. But what you do is, and ideally if you've got a couple of years worth, you can aggregate the first year and plot the second year. But what it does over time is it gives you a trend. So you see, let's say we're doing it for sales. You can see our average sales for the last year have been X. Are they going up? Are they staying flat? Are they going down? And because it's giving you that trend, it's actually an early warning system again. Because if things start to flatten off or start to go down, that's not the result of, Easter was at the wrong time this year or everybody took their summer holidays, because that's all been eliminated. It actually shows that you're selling less, and if it goes down for 2 or 3 months, it's not good news. So the fact that it gives you a trend is predictive, and again, you can do something about it and do something with it. But you can use it for all sorts of stuff, and it's dead simple because it's literally a spreadsheet, and then it gets plotted in our graph. So the trend charts are good. The dashboards themselves, again, as you can see, great fan of red, amber, green. Make it visual, make it red, amber, green. It's working great. For those that, a lot of people are very visually minded. So, I defy anyone not to be able to look at that and think, I want to look at the red areas. I'm happy with the green, but I want to look at the red because it's just what your eye's drawn to, and that's where you should be looking. If you would rather that, or if you have people that are more numeric than anything, then it's easy to assign values to these. So, you know, the greens can be 3, the amber's 2, the red's 1, and you've got 10 KPIs there. So 30 is perfection. Yeah. So, you know, we didn't do 30, we did 26. Okay, what do we do the next month? We did 25. Okay, we're going in the wrong direction. Why? Because we've now got 3 reds where we had 2, and we look at them and we sort them out. So again, making it highly visual means that, one, it's easier, quicker to do, and people take it in more. You just naturally look at that and you know what's happening, and you can see that the business is getting better just quickly. No rocket science. You can then analyze it and spend as much time on it as you want. But in terms of a quick snapshot, and that's all the KPI dashboard is, it's a snapshot. It's just a quick look. It's just to prompt you to either do something or to be happy. And we all want to be happy. So the more we see green, the more we can be happy, unless you're a Rangers supporter, in which case you maybe want to substitute blue for the green, but that's tricky to do. Diversity these days, you can't do it. You don't have separated workforces anymore that you did when I was a boy. So that's the KPI dashboards. Step 8 is the simplest thing of all, and it's just the acceptance that we need to make changes. A strategy is not set in stone. Yeah, it's not something like the Bible that once written cannot be changed. Although I think, to be fair, the Bible's been changed multiple times over the past few hundred years. But what I'm trying to say is, people think that when they've done a strategy, that's it. And if they have to make changes, it's because they missed something, or they did something wrong, or the strategy was wrong in the first place. Not true in 99% of cases. The reason you have to make adjustments to strategy is because something's happened that has not been within your control. And obviously at the moment, we've got the lovely example of COVID. How many people in their strategies planned for COVID? That would be none, apart from, according to the Donald, the Chinese, who launched it on us all in the first place. So they planned it to destroy the world economy while they picked back up. But I would never spread such malicious rumours from the mouth of one Donald Trump. But apart from that, none of the rest of us had a bloody clue. The banking crisis is another example. Now, to be fair, some people say they saw it coming, but nobody did it. Even the ones that saw it coming didn't do anything about it to mitigate it. So these things happen. And in less extreme, for your own individual business, smaller things, they don't affect the world, but they'll affect your business. So you have to be comfortable making adjustments. And I spoke about, you know, the idea that you stick to your strategy, but there's a shiny thing over there. Sometimes it's the right thing to do to go after the shiny thing. But if you are going to do that, just go through the process again, document it, just detail what the impacts are going to be and communicate that to people. So making adjustments is normal. It's what we do. You know, you can't drive in a straight road from here to between Edinburgh and Glasgow. You have to go around a few bends. Doesn't mean to say you're not going from Edinburgh to Glasgow, but you're not going in the straight direction that maybe you thought you were going in, because you're not a train, you're a car. So where are we with all of this? Well, you'll be delighted to know we're coming to the end. So just remember this, remember the think, plan, do. And again, I would suggest that it's just a great mantra to have at the back of your mind. Think, don't jump to the do. Think about it. Think of your options, how you would plan it, what it could be, and then execute it. As what's the phrase they use? Failing to plan is planning to fail. And it's true. So just always bear that in mind as you're going through. So function of strategy, just a bit of visualization here, is to go from this to this, which is to take just stuff and make something wonderful out of it. And that's what you're all doing. You're all taking stuff, whether it be actual materials or ideas or concepts or services or products, and you're turning it into something wonderful that people want to buy, that they like, and they keep coming back for more. So you're all doing something wonderfully positive, but that is the way to do it, I would suggest, is to follow the idea of the strategic cycle and to make sure you go through all these stages and never assume, keep it simple, just all the things we talked about. Because again, the simpler you keep it, the more chance you've got of delivering it and making it successful. Whereas if you overcomplicate things, people give up. It's like building IKEA furniture. Yeah. If the book's more than 16 pages long, you just think, oh Jesus, I should have paid somebody to do this for me. If it's 3 or 4 pages long, you think, oh, this is simple, we'll soon whack this together. And it's true with a strategy as well. So checklist, just summarising what we've talked about. Personal goals, 100% the place to start, my view. And try and align those as much as possible with the business goals, but you can only do that when you know what the personal goals are. We don't know what we don't know. Have clarity within your business of what your core skills are, because that opens up a lot, hopefully, of opportunities to take those core skills and help accelerate the growth of the business by moving into new markets that you're not in just now without the need for huge investment or reskilling or retraining. Make sure the vision's clear, make sure it's succinct if you possibly can, and that it has some kind of measure, at least one measure on it, maybe 2. Get the detailed roadmap with your 90-day goals. The quarters are just good chunks, they're good sizes, both to give people objectives and actions to take, but also to measure where you are and how you're doing. Double check the resource gaps, maybe by working backwards, taking the plan from year 3 and working it back to 0, just to make sure you know when you've got to do things because of different lead times. Be able to answer the what's in it for me question. And again, up to your organization what the answer is, but have an answer. Yeah, because somebody will ask you the question. And if they don't ask you it overtly, you can guarantee they're asking it between their pals and their mates. And you want to head that off. You really want to head that off. Make sure that your vision is driving the daily activity using the likes of 90-day action plans. Make sure when you, and I think Brian referred to this, when you're taking decisions within the business, always think about, if I do this, is this going to take me closer to my strategy, further down the road of it, or is it taking me away from my strategy? It's not to say if it takes you away, it's the wrong thing to do, but just be conscious of the impact of any decision you make that's having on the strategy and the vision for the business. So, the goals you need will clarify what your strategy is, have simple visual metrics. In-flight adjustments are fine. And if in doubt, use step 9. And step 9 of the 8-step process is start and do the whole bloody thing again. That's step 9. Just do it again and ground the whole thing. And again, as I say, there's no guarantees that this is going to make it successful, but I genuinely believe it will increase the chances of overall success if you follow that kind of process. For those that are aware of Jim Collins, the great Jim Collins, and the Jim Collins flywheel, you can actually look at the strategy cycle as a bit of a flywheel in terms of it should be continuous. This is something that just goes on. It's not something you do once and walk away from. I think I said at the start, my ideal is an 18-month rolling strategy. So you're always dropping off at the front when you've finished it and adding on at the back. So you're always looking out at least 18 months. So it's maybe the kind of thing you update once a quarter, but it should be relatively quick and easy to do, because all you're really doing is tagging a quarter on the end. You're not doing the whole strategy again unless you really have to. But a good starting point is there's eight areas within that, is to, if you were to rate your current strategy or how you approach strategy in terms of planning, how would you rate yourself? How would you score yourself between 1 and 10 in each of those areas? Could be we're really good. We've got a fantastic strategy roadmap. So I'm giving myself 10 for that. But you know what? We maybe didn't communicate it as well as we could. So I'm only going to give myself a 7. And if you score that, it's not that you miss out any steps when you're doing it, but you may need some more effort in some areas than others, because some you're already good at, you've got in the bag, and it's a job well done. But you don't skip a step, you do the whole thing, if that makes sense. But it's just a way of scoring yourself and just a kind of good starting point. So final message in two different forms: strategy should equal daily activity times time. That's it. That's what your strategy should be. And if you can prove that to people and you've got your 90-day action plans, then that's actually what it will be. So it's not something highfalutin, it's actually how you're running your business on a daily basis. You don't have day-to-day business and strategy. It's the same thing, or it should be, for it to succeed. So there you go. I'm done. What I need from you, Brian, I've already sorted.